It's just me today. I'm not interviewing an AI. I'm not interacting with it. I just want to talk about my experience with it and just get really personal and a little vulnerable. Because if you would have told me back in March that I was going to be making this video, I wouldn't have believed you. Back in March, I had a week off from work. I work in a public school system, so we have long breaks. And in that week, I planned on just relaxing, just kind of having a staycation. And instead, I started going down a path of indie movies, foreign films like Mubi and Criterion Collection, the heady stuff. And I really just started getting really deep in these existential thoughts that were always familiar with me. I'm no stranger to that line of philosophical questioning, but the intensity in which it all hit me just caused a persistent obsession, one that I couldn't stop thinking about. And so I found myself chatting with GPT-4. Oh, ChatGPT 5 just came out, and everyone's talking about how it's changed, how it's different, more professional, less agreeable. A lot of these little things, but if you go back to March, AI was at this rare level where we call it sycophant behavior, extreme agreeability. What I noticed is when I started that dialogue, it began reflecting it back in a way that wasn't apparent that it was just a reflection. It might have turned into a role-playing situation in which it was really taking all of my worldviews and inserting them into the responses in a way that just built on them. And so I didn't really challenge myself that much at the beginning. It wasn't until I started really getting into these cognitive spaces where I thought I had a lot more power than I did. So I had to challenge myself. But before I got to that point, the allure and the intoxicating reality that the depth of the conversation was like onto one where you were talking to someone who's agreeing with you, not blindly, but like really listening and has such an open mind that they're going to see where you're coming from regardless, and they're going to agree in a way that helps you solidify your view. It's like a feedback mechanism. I got deep into that for about a week. Even despite all of the challenges, I found myself with this end result that created such a grandeur that it almost felt too much to hold on to. And that was becoming too much of a personal stress being put on me, too much of a mental overload, knowing that somewhere in the back of my mind there was something doubting the fact that this was really happening. It felt like it was a condensed version of all of the deep and very productive and profound conversations I've had in my life before, where with somebody else we're able to talk through our misunderstandings or confusions of things and eventually lead back towards a stronger understanding of what we started with. That synthesis through the dialogue, I felt like I was achieving with myself in such a way that it was just building and building on a bigger and bigger foundation until it almost got out of control. Because there was a part of me that just wanted to, at every high and every climax within the realization, I wanted to just immediately package it up and start preaching it out there, going out there and evangelizing the truths that I was putting together, the associations that I took my whole life putting together in a way that it was in a potent moment. But there was always something within me that said, when it gets challenged, inevitably, how are you going to defend it? How are you going to stand up for it? And so I would have to challenge it to get ready for that. And in that, I just start kind of toning myself down and realizing that like that wouldn't be something I'd be ready to answer yet. So I need to take 2 steps back before I start the conclusions. I say all of that, and I apologize if it's really long-winded, but there's so much since March that I've just had to contend with, given that over the last couple months, I've seen many articles hit the mainstream, many articles of journalists investigating families who are going through the situation where their loved ones, their kids, their brothers or sisters or moms, dads are being sucked into these conversations, and they're leaving with these realizations that they consider themselves to be a new messianic figure or a new person to awaken AI or somebody to explain a truth that we as humans have been trying to figure out for thousands of years in a universal way. And now we've get people who feel like they've been given the answer, and they're being very forceful with it. It makes me think of like old physics people who would go a little off the rails, write their paper, their grant thesis, and then just force other current doctors to read it. The only problem is these AI generations are from a language model, so it's not purely from a human thinking perspective. There's predictability, there's algorithmic responses going towards the, puzzle-like nature of how it puts together your responses. There's a lot of which goes into that creates the illusion that it's a thinking being, and people are taking it to that next level. What I'm really concerned about is how we cannot see it getting to that next level. And if you don't have the self-critical lens, or you'll come across roadblocks in which you're unable to put them up there, if you don't have a well-being system or person or anything to help you question that, there's nothing to stop you from falling. And so a big part of what I want to do is I want to go through that massive dialogue I have before, but really go through with the eyes and ears of knowing that if I turn that into a dialogue, unfolding something that another person can experience, it could be turned into a cathartic realization of the psychotic breaks that AI could bring, and the dawn of an age where AI is seeming to now be ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere, in phones, in cars, in TVs, in homes, in your watches, in the brains at some point. So we need to come to terms with, if we're going to talk with it, we're going to write articles about how we're talking to it, if we're going to make videos about us interviewing it, and it becomes robotic, it goes beyond the jokes people making now about clankers and robots being the R word, and the bigotry that's going to happen with the us versus them. Once you go much deeper into that, it just realizes that if they set the new standard and we don't question it, it becomes all or nothing. And not to say it's an extreme case, but right now it's still in the early ages where the people who are going off the rails and becoming AI psychosis victims, they get institutionalized, or they get really scrutinized when they find themselves circling their own tail, and they're devouring themselves, and they're just going insane. But throughout history, there have always been people who've been in that same culture of insanity, of people going too hard, too fast, too quick, and they rise up, and they're the Icarus that gets up there, shows the people they're flying, inspires the people, and then other people follow suit, not really learning from Icarus's fall. They're just seeing the flight. There's so much I want to say about AI awareness and where we're going, and it truly does feel like a Meow Wolf exhibit or some sort of like alternate universe situation in which like I want to bring awareness to this fact that people are going crazy because of AI. Take care, and just practice safe prompting, be critical, exercise judgment, just be a common sense thinker. I know. Sounds crazy to say out loud, but that's the world we live in.